Welcome to the third video in the Let's Make the Impossible game series. So we're going to get some obstacles for our cube to jump over here, so let's just go ahead and dive right into it. First thing we need is to go into the sprites folder, pull in our triangle. This is going to be the first obstacle we work with. So it's actually going to move to the left. The player is going to be at a standstill. So what we're going to do is build the whole map in front of the player and have the whole map move towards the player, and the player will jump over the obstacles as they move towards the player. And then as they go to the left of the player, we will actually delete them and like free up some resources. All right, so we've got our triangle in here. We need to create a script that says move left. So let's go into our scripts. So we'll call this obstacle movement controller. Double click that. All right. So let's have a float called movement speed. Make that a public float. We'll set that to 4 for now. Under our update method, we need to add a transform.position plus equal new vector 3. And we're going to say movement speed times time.delta time. And then we'll say 0 and 0. So we're just going to add to its position over time. And actually, we're going to negate the movement speed. So negative movement speed times time.delta time, because we're moving from the right to the left. All right, save that. Let's go back into our editor here. Oh, we need to add the script to the triangle. So grab our triangle obstacle and drag in the obstacle movement controller. Press play. And you should see the obstacle float to the left. And that looks about right. So let's add a couple in here, just kind of get a feel for it. So if we just duplicate this, you kind of see how this works. So not moving quite fast enough. All right, so what we'll do is we will delete the rest of these. And we're going to create a prefab out of this triangle. So let's make a new folder called prefabs. Drag in our triangle obstacle. And now we can put multiple out here. And we can edit them all from the prefab. So they weren't moving quite fast enough, so let's make it a 6 and see how that feels. That feels pretty decent. I think either the triangles need to be a little bit smaller or the player needs to move a little bit faster. So let's set the movement speed to 7. That looks about right. All right, now let's open up a triangle and add a collider on this. So we can add a polygon collider, 2D. What's nice about these is we can actually make them, they'll actually match the shape of the object. So we can have a much more accurate collision rather than having a big square around it. So we do that, and we're going to actually set this to is trigger because we don't want the player actually deflecting off of it or bouncing off of it. We want them to hit it and die immediately, like they do in the Impossible game. So we've added this. Now we can go into our scripts folder and make a new script. And we'll call this player killer controller. And anything that the player can interact with that will kill them, this script will control it. So we need to say on trigger enter 2D, player dies. But we need to check, is it the player? To do this, we can go back into Unity. Grab our player square, and we can give them either a layer or a tag. And we're going to go ahead and just do a tag because we've already got a tag in here called player. And then we can say if collider 2D dot game object, or nope, we can actually say tag. Wrong thing. If collision dot tag is equal to player, then player dies. Otherwise, we don't want to do anything because the other collisions don't matter. So to test this out, we can just add a debug.log. And then go back to Unity to test this out. Hit play. Now, if we watch the console down here, nothing's happening. And that's because we didn't add the game object, or the script. This is the most important step that I forget almost every time. All right. And we added it to the wrong thing. All right, let's get the prefabs. Go in here, and now we can add component, and we'll call it player killer. There we go, player killer controller. Now, this should work. And we can see there was an event fired. Right there, player's dead. 4 instances every time he overlapped with the triangles. Now we needed something to actually happen when the player is dead. So what it looks like happens in the Impossible game is essentially the whole scene reloads. So we'll do the same thing in the player controller, or actually let's do it in player killer controller. We'll just say scene manager and press Alt Enter, and you can get the reference to it. And I think it's load scene. Yep. And we need to load our scene, which I have not named yet. So we're going to go back into Unity real quick. Project, assets, scenes. Called sample scene. We're just going to reload it or rename it and call it main scene. Or let's call it level 1. Because this game does have multiple levels. There you go. So let's take, for now, we'll take level 1. Put in the scene. All right. And we'll need to add this into the build or it will not load it. So if we go to build settings, it's already in there. So now if we hit this, let's move these triangles back a little bit. So we clear the first one, we're good, but we hit the second one, restarts the level. Starting to actually have a functional game. All right. Next thing to get in is the cubes. And the cubes, you cannot hit the sides, but you can land on top, and that is fine. So we'll do that by bringing in a sprite. Let's grab our square. And we will add a component to it, which is going to be, we're going to add 2 actually. So we're not a box collider 2D. And this is not a trigger. This is just the box. And then we're going to add another box collider 2D. And this one is going to be a trigger, but it's going to be slightly wider. So the player will, if the player hits it, they're going to be hitting it on the outside. And where is it? There we go. So if we scale the size on the X and then lower it a little bit on the Y, we can kind of set the offset here. Does not need to be very big at all. But if the player hits that right there, because it's a trigger, then we can trigger the player die script, which we can just add that straight to this player killer controller. And we can add in the movement controller. And then this thing is ready to go. Let's just drag it right here. We can test it out. All right, so if I, oh, the speed is different on that one. So let's set that to 6. Oh, still wrong. I think it's 7 on these, isn't it? Yep, movement speed is 7. So on the square controller here, we'll set that back to 7. All right, now we can try this out. So it comes up, if I run into it, reloads the level, but if I jump on top of it, we're fine. But we can't clear that triangle. That works exactly as it's supposed to. The last piece to add is just this black square. So what we'll do is we'll just go to here, add, create a game object, 2D, and sprite, a square. And we're just gonna make this black. We don't actually need an asset for it. And this is, essentially this is just kind of a kill zone that's in the Impossible game. Generally they kind of set it in between blocks like this. So we're just going to go in here, add a trigger, box collider 2D, and make that a trigger. Add in the player killer and the movement. Make that movement 7. And now we can kind of mimic some of the obstacles that's pretty common in the Impossible game. Slide these triangles back, and then we'll just duplicate this a bunch. I think I need that many. Put a cube over here. And now we have an obstacle that will kill us if we land in it. But if we can clear it, then we're okay to go. But if we miss and fall in, it'll restart the level. Right, and that about does it for this video. We got most, if not all of our obstacles in. Next time we're going to work on some polish, getting things working a bit better, kind of some of the nice fade in, fade out transitions, and building out the level. Thanks for watching.